Okay, so the last session for the second day, which is going to be the Early Career Investigator Forum, supposed to be a kind of a career development panel, so that we can all discuss about what are the possibilities for advancing your career, using some examples from success stories of what we, from the panel we have with us today. So I guess we can start by presenting yourselves to the audience, few minutes, just saying what's your current position, how did you manage to reach that far, and we are fortunate that we have representatives from a variety of disciplines. So I guess we'll start with Michele. Ladies always go first.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. So I was born and raised in South Africa, a very small town south of Johannesburg. But my father was an engineer, and we traveled so that I did my high school years in Mexico and Canada, and then went back to South Africa to pursue my university career. So I started off with doing agricultural genetics as my first degree, and then I did microbial genetics and recombinant DNA, and you have to remember this is a very long time ago, and then proceeded to do a PhD in human genetics. And I was really fortunate that I ended up in a department where we had a head who was like one of the founders of human genetics in South Africa, and he was very committed to research and had also already started a genetic clinic. But before we could do anything in terms of molecular genetics, we actually had to build the lab. And I think that's the story of many low middle income country people, is that if you want to do it, you've got to build it. So just fast forward, in the early 2000s, I started a partnership with a computational scientist, because I realized even then that bioinformatics was going to be the future, and big data and analyzing variants. And I think that was one of the best decisions in my career to do that. And then very much later, I had to start an institute that I could then direct to take forward research on African genetic variation in states of disease, but also looking at population genetics. So that's just sort of in a nutshell. Low middle income countries, you often have to build it if you want it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So my name is Osama Elhassan. I'm coming all the way from Dubai. I'm actually a software engineer by training, so I consider myself as an intruder to this community. So I started my career for digital health maybe 20 years ago after finishing my PhD. It was in software architecture, but for socio-technical systems. And I thought that the healthcare systems, technologies, I mean, is the best example of what we call socio-technical systems, where humans or doctors who can superpose whatever written within the system, so they can break the glass and decide things are different than what the system will say. So I started my digital health career. Since then, I joined Dubai Health Authority. I was part of the team who put forward the digital health strategy for the city, which was kind of like a data-driven strategy. We developed what we call the Health Information Exchange across all Dubai, and we promoted this across the country. Also, I was part of the team who developed what we call the regulatory framework for digital health. So as a department now in DHA, we are the one who is responsible of vetting technology solution platforms, especially the ones that are used at point of care. Apart from my work with DHA, I started almost 7 or 6 years ago a non-for-profit initiative called ZIMAM. So ZIMAM is focused mainly on workforce development in digital health, because we realized that one of the main stumbling blocks for getting the real impact of digital health systems is lack of well-trained workforce. And the reason for that we see most of the time that most of digital transformation projects are run by technology people without the right adoption from the clinical side. And we thought that we need to do a lot of cross-skilling from the healthcare workforce to be part of the journey, to make sure that we really get the fruits of any digital transformation investment that we put. That was a very successful project. We started in 2016 with 5 people, and now we've done a lot of activities that we can see 600, 700 people from all over the region of GCC working with us, developing projects, sharing knowledge and experiences. So things are getting more and more complicated, and now we think that even genomics and bioinformatics can come under this umbrella, because we think that there's a huge workforce development even in genomics and bioinformatics. And we try to use our experience to help with this issue.
Thank you. My name is Segun Fatumo. I'm with the MRC in Uganda. I'm also an associate professor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So I started my own journey, also very similar to my colleague here. My degree, first degree, second degree, third degree, were all in computer science, and they were all in Nigeria. I studied all my degree in Nigeria. So after that, I went to the UK. I went to the US to do my postdoc in bioinformatics, which I did part of I did some bioinformatics also for my PhD. So I did postdoc in bioinformatics, and after that first postdoc, I did second postdoc, which was now in the UK at the Wellcome Sanger Institute. So I was there for a while, since 2013, because for me, that was like the beginning of a career for me, because I was doing something a bit different. That was the time in 2013, was the time I had to learn a lot of genetics. I have to learn of doing genome association study, doing most of the things I do today. So I did that postdoc for a long time. So I've done postdoc for almost like 8 years, you know. And so after my postdoc, I was very fortunate to start my own group. So now currently I lead a group of about 15 people, and in those few years we've been very successful with the group. So I'm very happy with what I'm doing today, but it took a lot of time to build up myself with doing a postdoc and doing postdoc and doing postdoc before I was able to kind of break through to do what I'm doing today. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Pratiksha Gyawali and I'm from Nepal. I was born and raised in Nepal, and I completed most of my education in Nepal. So I wanted to become a doctor, so I did my undergrad education in Nepal, and after completing that I went on to pursue clinical biochemistry and became an MD. And after that I joined as a faculty, full-term faculty at Kathmandu University School of Medical Sciences. And my basic role is in teaching medical students and students of health and allied sciences, a lot of teaching. And also I work as a clinical biochemist at a hospital laboratory. And so my interest in genetics came from my current role in academics and diagnostics as well. So I quickly realized I am not sufficiently trained in genetics to teach these students, to transfer skill, and also to actually start any diagnostic services in the hospital. So I chose that area to uplift my career in that direction. And in 2019, I saw an advertisement of NIH-led summit, which was International Summit in Human Genetics and Genomics, and I attended that summit, and it was kind of eye-opener for me to see such a huge advancement in genetics and genomics in the world outside my world. And so there was interest, and but I didn't know what to do and how to do. And thankfully, the COVID happened, and not thankfully, but COVID happened, and then people realized more about PCR and genetics. I think so. People came to learn about genetic testing and all. And the second point is I also was connected to G2MC in the same time. And then I'm here today. We're discussing and meeting experts from around the world, and this is very much overwhelming for me. And this is. Oh.
Hi, I'm Alan Schuldiner. I was born actually in Japan, a U.S. Air Force base in Japan. Spent most of my growing life in the New York area. Was an undergrad at a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania called Lafayette College, where I was a chemistry major. And my dream was to become an organic chemist towards the end of undergrad. And then I was turned on to biology, maybe the last 6 months of my undergraduate career. I really disappointed my chemistry professors by going to Harvard Medical School and got my medical education there. I was a resident so I'm a physician and a physician scientist. I got my internship and residency experience at Columbia Presbyterian in New York. That was a time where AIDS was just starting. Nobody knew anything about what was causing AIDS, and quite an immersion in internal medicine at the time. I then went on to the National Institutes of Health to be a fellow in endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism, and got my first faculty appointment at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. Actually, I was in the division of geriatric medicine, and that was an eye-opener to understand how aging interacts with disease susceptibility, and started to become interested in genetics, I think about that time. And then spent 17 years at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, where I was the head of the Division of Endocrinology, Diabetes, and Nutrition, also the Associate Dean for Personalized Medicine, as my interest in genetics and genomics proceeded. I guess my claim to fame in terms of the research that I do is the work that we do or have done in the Old Order Amish in Pennsylvania. They're a founder population. You heard a bit about founder populations earlier today. And the rest of my career was really very opportunistic in terms of studying all sorts of disorders, from complex diseases to rare diseases, focusing on the Amish. And it's now hard to believe, about 9 years ago, I made a transition from academia to industry. I'm now a vice president at the Regeneron Genetics Center, which is a part of Regeneron Pharmaceuticals in New York. And I've been very fortunate to be able to hold two hats over those 9 years. I'm still part-time faculty at the University of Maryland, where I continue to pursue translational research, largely in the area of implementation science, with the realization in my old age that, you know, you can make a lot of discoveries, you can publish a lot of papers, but at the end of the day, if these things are not implemented to make a difference in actual patients and improve the human condition, you're pretty much wasting your time. So I do a lot of implementation science on the university side, and at Regeneron is where I continue my discovery research in a very translational model.
All right, thank you. So this session should be interactive, but we might try and prime it with a few questions from the co-chairs. So just to set the stage while people warm up for the questions, so we have a breadth of experience, both from relatively senior people to much more junior people, from developing countries, from developed countries, from people from academia, people from the health system, and people from industry. Now, what I might prime the discussion with, since I don't see any hands up yet, is developing countries are, of course, dear to my heart. And especially since none of my Latin American colleagues are here, I can say whatever I want. But I'm a gringo who speaks Spanish. And so people tell me, I don't have to explain to you how difficult this is, because everyday life in a developing country is much more difficult than in a developed country. And on that superimposed, you're dealing with research. So what advice would you have for doing research in a resource constrained setting in a developing country? So we have some people who are here from these countries. We also have people who hopefully have collaborated with people from such countries. So back to you. Who wants to start? Okay.
So I could say briefly that having spent 11 years in the Netherlands as a postdoc in the beginning and later on as a faculty member, doing developmental biology, I simply had to change direction simply because I could not do competitive research at an international scale on developmental biology in Greece. So I had to move to something which is more translational. So this apparently difficulty turned out to be something that gave a whole new boost in my career, because translational science and pharmacogenomics appeared to be the right place at the right time. So it turned out actually quite well. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so you are right. There are so many challenges working in a low middle income country. I'll give an example. When I was in my PhD, which was in bioinformatics, computer science, I was trying to run an algorithm, and that was taking months, I mean, maybe 3 or 4 months on my computer, because there was no high-performing computing in the university where I went. I didn't go to the best university in my country. So I was carrying that laptop everywhere I went for more than 3 months, because I don't want, the reason why I was doing that because of power problem. If the power is gone, so the algorithm is gone, I have to start over again. So when I had the opportunity of going to Germany to do part of my PhD, the same algorithm, I put it on the server. Within a few minutes, 2 minutes, it was run to the end. And that was like the shocker to me, that was something that was really bothering me for months. That ran for only a few minutes. So now, most of my work is in Uganda, and some of those problems, they are still there. They're not going anywhere. But I have made up my mind, I will never allow any excuse to be an obstacle for me. So one of the things that we do is that we collaborate a lot. And I mean, in my group, we do a lot of collaboration. We collaborate within the country, within the continent in Africa. We also collaborate outside Africa. So we collaborate with colleagues in everywhere, and they have access to high-performing computing or resources that that we don't have. So when we don't have resources, we use resources from the collaborator. So that's one way that we do it. That doesn't mean that every time we have access to what we need, but that solves the problem. And that's just one example of high-performing computing. There are other issues. Before I got one of my major grants, if you are going to publish in impact journal, you need to have money. One of the papers I published a few months ago, I paid £10,000, and I mean £10,000 for a paper I published in Nature Medicine. I was able to pay that because I have grants. When I didn't have grants, there was no way I would pay that. So what I would have done by that time is to collaborate with people that have the money to do it. So there must be a way out, and I would say that we should never allow those obstacles to be on the way.
So I think I'm happy to take the next one. So working in a low resource environment is complicated. And I think, although you want to collaborate widely, you also need to collaborate wisely. And I think it is about understanding that your goals are aligned with the goals of your collaborator. So, very early on, having conversations about, why are we doing it? Are we thinking about this in the same way? Is really important. And, I think we use mechanisms now as well as sort of agreements that we write between two groups that you can go back and look at again, because if you don't do that, you often end up with a problem when you get to publication and there's an expectation on one side that first author would be this or the last author would be that. So I think my advice to young people is, the international scientific community is very generous, and we can learn so much as people coming from more resource constrained environments. But again, you have to make sure that that you can stand up and be an equal collaborator. You don't want to be a sample provider. You want to make sure that you understand the science and that you can stand up when it comes to analysis and interpretation. And I think, in terms of collaborations, always make sure that you can make a contribution to the science. I think that's really important.
And if I may say here, we often hear resource-limited environments and we think of money. So one clear example is, for example, the UAE that has huge financial resources, enormous technical capacity, and they lack the genomics knowledge. And I can say this because it's perhaps by far the country that has by far the most genomes analyzed, and they have no idea what to do with them. So knowledge is also something which is quite important. And in the sense that the resource limiting environment could be also not necessarily the technical facilities, but also knowledge. Anyone? Yeah, please go ahead.
So we want to open it up to the floor, and I understand that there are some people who want to ask questions. So I appreciate the comments about electricity and, for example, slow internet. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that makes it different, but also just day-to-day life. You know, dealing with the bureaucracies in some of the countries is more than a little interesting. To pick up the more general theme that Michele had, one of the things I've learned relatively early on, and I've held grants in 3 countries on 3 continents, is if you get along with somebody, that's a good sign. If your gut is telling you that this might be a little shaky, you should trust your gut. And many of us who are a little bit older will have those kind of experiences. Do we have questions from the floor? Great.
I feel like I shouldn't go first since I don't think I can be classified as an early career investigator anymore. But I'm just wondering from the panel, if you could go back in time and tell your young self one piece of advice, what would it be, knowing what you know now?
So mine would be, you know, it's good to learn all the technical skills, knowing how to do analysis and be the best person to analyze. But mine will be that every young scientist should learn the soft skills, skills that people don't really pay attention to, like effective communication. And it could be that you come to a conference, you want to speak with somebody, maybe a senior person. So what do you want to talk to them? What do you want to say to them? Because that can mean anything. It could be a skill like public speaking, conflict resolution. Because you're going to have a lot of issues with your supervisor, with mentors. So how are you going to resolve that? It could be skills like, so many soft skills that are very important. So if I will go back, I will learn that at the beginning. I will not focus mainly on I can do analysis, I know how to run data. That is not everything. That doesn't make anybody a leader. So what makes you a leader is going to be the soft skill. So that would be the advice that I'm going to be giving. Another one is about every time as a young person, something that really worked for me. Every time you want to make a presentation at a conference or an event, see that presentation as an opportunity to sell yourself. And don't sell yourself cheap. So let me tell you how I got my first postdoc. I went for a workshop in Nigeria, in Ibadan, in Nigeria. There was a professor from the US, from the University of Georgia in the US. Her name is Jessica Kinsinger. She's a big name on bioinformatics of malaria at that time. So she came for that conference, for the workshop. And I was presenting my PhD work. I was talking about my PhD work. She was listening to me. That was everything. That was the interview. I was not doing an interview. So a few months after the workshop, she wrote me an email. I want you as a postdoc in my lab. So the reason why she wanted me is because I did not sell myself cheap. And because every time I present, I see it as an opportunity to sell myself. So for a young person, I would say, don't sell yourself cheap. If you go to a conference, you have an opportunity, do everything possible to do it very well.
I guess maybe because I'm older, I have so many things to advise, but I'll pick just 1 or 2. So for one thing, I think it's really important to realize that the business we're in, human genetics and genomics, it's a team sport. And it's really important to be able to communicate, as was mentioned. And the best way to do that is essentially to become deep in some aspect of the position you're going to play on that team. But at the same time, have enough superficial knowledge, I'll call it, to be able to speak the language of the rest of the members of your team. So the idea of multidisciplinary team science is an important one. Communication is a really important part to that. And being deep in something and also broad enough to be able to speak the language to communicate with your team is an important piece. The second thing I'll mention is don't be afraid to reinvent yourself over time. Get out of your comfort zone, become opportunistic, especially when it comes to funding opportunities. So my career started with the genetics of type 2 diabetes. We were working with the old order Amish. Someone came to me and said, what about bone disease in the Amish? I didn't know anything about bone disease, but we wrote a grant and we then studied osteoporosis. And then the NIH came and put out an RFA saying, well, what's the relationship between bone mineral density and coronary artery calcification? So we wrote a grant and we started studying coronary artery calcification. And then a big RFA came out speaking to gene-environment interactions in cardiovascular disease. So we went ahead and did all sorts of crazy things in the Amish. We gave them high-fat diets and high-salt and low-salt diets. And one of the interventions was aspirin to see what are the inter-individual variation in aspirin. I knew nothing about platelet function, but we learned a little bit something, and we measured platelets. And then the Pharmacogenomics Research Network came about, a big NIH funding opportunity. And before I knew it, we were studying the pharmacogenomics of antiplatelet therapies. It took me the first 5 years to figure out how to pronounce clopidogrel. And ultimately, through GWAS, we were the first to identify the CYP2C19 loss of function variants. And then we decided that, well, there's no cardiologist that's even thinking about doing this testing. And that's when I became much more interested in implementation science and figuring out what are the barriers to taking basic science, discovery science into the clinic. So could I have ever imagined that, I was going to go from here to there over the course of my career? No, but the idea of being opportunistic and getting out of your comfort zone, I think is a good model for a longer career.
Just I want to add a few points to what has been said. So I think maybe this could be our role to help next generations to have a kind of more smooth journey comparing to the people who come earlier. I believe that we can learn a lot from the journey that we had to push forward medical informatics as a profession, to convince clinicians to take this early extra step to learn more about medical informatics and how to engage in digital transformation. I think maybe the same steps that we had can be also useful for genetics. So how, for example, to cross-skill clinicians to be kind of citizens of genomics. So people who can open the doors for projects, work with them, talk the jargon of geneticists. That's really, really, really important. I believe that we need to could be a good idea to build kind of a competency-based frameworks for genetics, not only for people who are coming directly from medical genetics, but also from other groups like normal doctors, maybe nurses or lab technicians, how we can cross-skill them through sort of micro-credentialing. It should not be always kind of a degree, a master or a PhD. It could be something that you can do while you are on the job and do some sort of certification so you can engage more and more on those groups, or those teamworks. And you have to know what's your kind of core competencies that you need to get, soft competencies that you need to get, and you learn as you go. I think that kind of concept will be very useful. But to do this, you need to do a lot of collaboration, not only with universities, with professional groups, with even vendors who are providing solutions that support genetics. So building this kind of ecosystem of collaboration will add a lot. We did this maybe 5 years ago through Zimam, and it was a very, very successful. I believe that we started a small group in 2016 talking about what is health information exchange and who should be there and how we can develop it. In the first event, we had 12 people across all GCC countries. In 2022, we had the same meeting with 300 people in the room and 5 HIE projects up and running across all GCC. Just through collaboration, we managed it. So maybe later before we end, I can share with you a 1-minute video on how we developed this across the years. That will be an eye-opener for the whole team. So maybe just 1 minute from your time.
Okay.
I think maybe to add to that too, for the young investigators, it's really important that you don't throw around jargon without really understanding what is behind it. Because I think, you know, as a senior person, often looking at young people when they all say they want to do machine learning or they want to cure cancer, that is really a no-no because it shows that you haven't really thought about it. So when you do interviews, make sure that you've, for instance, read a little bit about the place that you're interviewing for. Prepare yourself well and make sure that you have read. So you can never read enough and understand enough because we all need different perspectives, not the same perspective. But you do need to play to your strength. So if your strength is teaching, use that. Because, you know, Alan was talking about multidisciplinary teams. And you need to develop something that you're really good at, because then you become a good member of a team. So whether it is bioinformatic analysis of next generation sequencing, that will make you a valuable member of the team. But that's not the only skill that that team needs. So I think, you know, think about what it is that you're good at, what makes you excited, what energizes you, because that's what you should follow going forward.
I guess we can see the video, yeah. The main benefit of this event is that it focuses on the people, part of the users of technology, rather than the other way around.
There's so many fantastic opportunities here in the Middle East. I see so much momentum. I've met so many fabulous people who are really making a difference in healthcare. I think come back in the next 3 to 5 years, things will be radically different, and I'm pleased to be able to be here to start that journey.
They share of knowledge, so we learn from experiences that from other boards that they expressed over here. And the main thing is that how to bridge the gap between the theory, research, academia, and the real practice.
So I'd like to add to, although I feel like I'm young for my young colleagues, I think say yes to, at this level of career, say yes to any exciting opportunities that you have, and then go for it, and then if you fail, then it's a lesson learned. If you are successful, then it's a huge clap in that regard. So I think it's not to be like too choosy to take up something. So every opportunity is a lesson learned. So I would say that.
In your comment, then I think we have the lady over there, but in your comment, what to do and what not to do, I would celebrate the little moments, little success that are important for you. Once you have a big success, for example, a big paper, don't overdo it. Because, for example, you publish in Nature Genetics, you have a paper in Nature Genetics on the very same issue, you have 10 more. So you run out of 10, right? So try to keep your feet on the ground, because occasionally people, when they grow academically, professionally, they get independent, they keep to forget where they started. So it's good to reflect, go back, look back, how you started, and try to treat your colleagues, junior colleague, as you were treated. And if you do that, if you don't do that, then I bet you will fail.
So I know we have more questions, and I want to give time for that. I just want to pick up on a comment that Alan made, just because I'm also a little bit older. So one way of keeping it fresh, which exists in academia and in many companies, is called a sabbatical. So go and do something different, learn something new, go to a different place. It'll rejuvenate both your career and your life. And now we're going to go back to the questions from the floor.
Hi, my name's Caitlin and I'm from South Africa. We've discussed what to do once you have a collaborator, but what are some of the key things that you all look for when identifying a collaborator in industry, in academia? What are some of the things that you look for? Thank you.
Okay, I mentioned collaboration at the beginning because I collaborate a lot, and I collaborate where there is a mutual respect and where there is a mutual benefit. So if I see that this collaboration will bring benefits to you and to me, I will do. If I think that you respect me and I respect you, you don't see me as, oh, he's just a new PI or he doesn't know anything. If you come with that idea, I don't collaborate. It's not compulsory. So for me, it's very important that there is mutual respect and mutual benefit. And also there should be transparency. You know, Michele was saying at the beginning, at the beginning you have like an MOU sign where it is clear what needs to be done, very clear, and who is doing what, and if there's a paper coming out. So who is going to be at what position? So if those things are very clear at the beginning, so it will help the collaboration. It will keep on coming up with more collaboration. So apart from all that, it's very important that collaboration is win-win for everybody. It's not somebody just getting all the credit and that person not getting. So if that is not there, it is not collaboration.
I agree with everything, but I think having conversations, meaningful conversations, is really important before you actually jump in and collaborate, to make sure that you are really aligned. And often just, talking about things that are not necessarily science tell you something about the person. And I think, Juergen, you were talking about gut feeling. And that is important, because if you, sort of don't enjoy the interaction, it's going to cause you problems later on. So many conversations are necessary before you actually enter in the collaboration.
May I just confirm what you are saying? In my experience, I really try to also took opportunities to work with the people that I like to work with and with who I had a feeling. And it's where it kind of helped me going where I went. It's kind of also follow the people that I felt connected with and stick with them. And maybe I diversed with compared to what I wanted to do at the beginning, but I learned at each process. I was just, oh, I want to work with that person because what that person is doing is great, but the person is great too. And I really want to collaborate with that person. And it's a great mentor, it's a great leader, and I want to learn also those skills. And that brought me to learn new things that I did not expect to learn. And you, as you said also, Alan, you took opportunities, just, oh, that one is a good one, I can try that. I think it's important. You had a question.
Yeah, mine is more a comment. It's not really a question. So I really appreciate, Michele, all the comments that you've made, because I think this part of contributing intellectually when you have a collaboration, right? To not be lazy and just be a provider of samples. It's so important. And a little bit to George's point, in terms of, yes, some places or some collaborators will lack certain skills, but I think that it's important, and as you said, right, if you engage with a potential collaborator to learn what they can do, what skills they can bring, because I think many times there's this assumption that people in low-resourced countries or settings, like they don't know bioinformatics or they don't know how to analyze data. And I think making those assumptions, it's not constructive. So I think learning what your collaborator can do and how they can engage intellectually in that collaboration is really important to make it work and be fair.
Yeah, I was just going to add one other thing. It's all about relationship building. I think you've heard about that. But also, when you think about a collaboration where friction often occurs is who gets credit for what, right? And the main thing are co-authorships on papers, for example, which is an important part of the academic life. And one piece of advice is, when you're working with a collaborator, you shouldn't be thinking about, that next paper. You should be thinking about the next 10 papers. And then that credit can be distributed in equitable ways when you're thinking about more of the long term.
Can I make comments on the perception that people from low middle income country are not able to make contribution? That is true. Sometimes they just feel like because you are from Uganda, you don't know anything. And we need to fight that, not fighting physically, fight that in the mind. You need to be ready to say that we bring something to the table. I want this collaboration because I bring something to the table. You come to me because you need something from me, and I need something from you. So it has to be mutual respect and mutual understanding. Something also similar to that is for young people is there will be so many intimidation. I came from a background where I did not go to any best university in my life. I did not go to Oxford or Cambridge or anywhere. Even in my country, I did not go to best university. But that is now past in my brain. So if I talk to you from Harvard, I don't see you as Harvard, I see you as colleague. So we talk at the level of colleague. It's not about the degree. So you come to me because I have something to offer, and I also need something from you. We should talk at that table. So at the beginning of my career, which is only 10 years ago, the way I see it, 2013, when I started the postdoc, so there were many intimidations that I fought in my mind, and I conquered them. One of them is that when I sit down in a meeting, the only thing I see in my mind is, oh, you are the only black person in that meeting. I don't see that again now. Or maybe you are going to see that, oh, you are the only female in that meeting. Or you are the only person that got access to that meeting. Those things are now barriers that I have overcome in my mind. So every young person listening to me needs to overcome that, because that happens. You see yourself, oh, I'm the only female here, and you are intimidated. Or you see, oh, I got accent, and you are intimidated. So accent compared to what? You don't have accent. You are fine. Just speak clearly. People will understand what you're saying. So what I'm saying is that all those intimidation needs to be conquered in your mind, and speak to people as colleagues. Make contribution, genuine contribution, and also expect something from them.
And to add on that, and thanks so much, Alan, don't mistreat your collaborators. You have to treat them in an equal way, because it's not only a very restricted field, it's a very small world of what we're working on. So you will eventually do something which is, if you mistreat the collaborator, something that it's not fair, he will find out, he or she, and he will react, because he has to protect his own interest, not his personal interest, his lab interest. And then you're ruined completely, because you built a bad reputation, not to mention that you could also be disrespectful.
I need to add one point on collaboration. I think there's also a very important player that we need to take care of, especially regulators. So I think the sky is not the limit with regard to collaboration. We have also rules, regulations, as per countries. Sometimes it restricts data sharing or sample sharing. So we need to talk with our regulators. We need to communicate to them the benefits of whatever collaboration. So sometimes you can find exemptions or workarounds around those policies. I believe that even maintaining good relationship with regulators is very important.
Thank you, my colleagues. I would thank you for the advice. And I would like to hear from each one of you one personal skill or professional skill that we can do without limit in one word or in an expression as an advice for our career, and also in the opposite side, something that can ruin our career that we have to avoid categorically. Thank you.
So it's one word for each? I think I used mine already. It's opportunistic. Maybe that word has a bad connotation, but I think you know how I'm using it. Strategic and opportunistic. I guess the negative, blinders. People who have their blinders on tend to not fare very well in the long term.
Would you say that's assumptions? Would you say that's making assumptions, having blinders on?
That's the negative part.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
So having blinders on would equal making an assumption.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
For the career, you mean? I think it's important, like you're persistent in what you are doing, and for the collaboration, be as honest as possible and keep communicating. I feel like just one meeting will not essentially secure a long-term collaboration. So for the sustainability, I feel like it is important you have the honest communication with the collaborators, and the collaborators also understand what are your barriers at your country and your context. So it's bilateral to understand what is required at both the end. So that is what I say.
I think I would say no excuse, no, because even in high-income country, in the US, the UK, there are barriers. There are so many barriers why things will not work. It's not only in low middle-income countries. So we should not try to leverage excuse. No excuse. No, if you want to do something, just do it. One thing that really helped me is one of my mentors, who's a very great mentor, trying to advise us. And in that room, he said that even in the UK, only 1% of people that have PhD eventually make it to become a leader or a principal investigator. And when he said that, so that just stuck with me. Because when he was saying that in the room, he was looking at me and said, even in the UK, only 1%. It was genuine. It was saying what is right, but I got the interpretation of that differently. So what that's interpreted to me is that you don't have a chance. Even people that went to the best university are not going to make it to the UK. Talk less of you. That was how I interpreted what he said. And I said that whatever it would take for me to do anything I want to do it. So I think it's important that we don't allow any excuse. You don't say, maybe I will not make it. Maybe this is not for me. If you think that you want to do something, just go ahead for it. No excuse.
So I would say be a careful listener. When people talk, really try and understand what they're saying. Not everybody is an equally good communicator, but they have something to say. So I think, to me, that is very important. And also to understand that there isn't one right way. And therefore, especially in big collaborations, when you have multi-partner projects, understand that not everybody has to do it exactly the same way. They have to buy into the vision, and it has to be scientifically rigorous, but there are different ways of doing it. And the other thing I would say is be optimistic.
So you asked for 2 words, Collaboration, it can take you forward. Arrogance can take you backwards.
So I would say believe in yourself and believe what you're doing, but do take advice from people along the way. So that's more than one word, but that's the good way. And if you have a bad feeling about somebody, there is probably something that will come to bite you at some point. So just trust your gut feeling.
I think we have time for one more question before you wrap up. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm normally a strange background in any room because I studied literature humanities before medicine and then bioethics before doing pharmacology and genomics, which is a very weird combination. And I think because of that, I am always as interested in the sort of communication aspect, policy aspect, implementation, as I am in the discovery science and the p-values. And it's been really amazing to hear so much of that validation from people here. But I guess I would look to you all for advice on how we can, because it's really quite hard actually, to make those non-quantitative aspects equal priority within scientific groups and fundings, etc., in terms of resource allocation. So I guess I would look to you all to ask advice on creative ways that we, as early career people, can bring equal resources, funding, and importance to the vital aspects of communication, engagement, implementation. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I guess, but I guess it poses a comment that I can give back. I guess being at the edges or the peripheries of multiple traditional disciplines is where the important discoveries are made. I think that point might have been made yesterday by someone else. And that's where all the new ideas come from. And I think in describing yourself, I'd have a lot of excitement to collaborate with you.
Yeah, so are you sure there are no other questions for the panel? Okay. Please, yeah.
So one other advice I have for anybody just starting is to embrace failure and see failure as a stepping stone. Because in this career, there will be so many opportunities to fail. You are going to apply for postdoc, it will be rejected. You're going to submit a paper that you think that is the best and it will be rejected. There will be so many rejections. It's very common. Now that I'm a PI, I've seen that many students, I have one student, paper was rejected, the first paper ever, and she has to go on sick leave for 2 weeks because the paper was rejected. So we need to get to a point where you understand that this will happen. It is not because your paper is not good. It might be because that paper is submitted to a wrong journal. It is not because your postdoc application is not good. It might be that you have applied or you have interviewed in the wrong group. So we need to understand that and see that failure as an opportunity to step forward, because there will be a load of failure. You will apply for grants, it will not be successful. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And if you don't just put your head down, when you lose, just keep on going. It's nothing. It's not about you. You should not take it personal. Just keep on going.
Actually, we never lose. We learn. Yeah, and the failure could be an opportunity. So keep that in mind. Don't consider yourself ever a loser, ever. No matter how many people say that, because we're highly competitive job. We're doing a very highly competitive job, especially as far as the pyramid gets narrower, the top. You have to be persistent in what you're doing, what you're believing, and believe on yourself. And because I heard that once, there's no such thing as the top. We never reach the top, even if we get big prizes, okay? We keep climbing and we just contribute small bits to the building that is called science, a scientific advancement, yeah? And the focus of us in particular should be the patient, not ourselves. Please.
So thank you all for coming. Please join me in thanking the panel and the audience for their participation, for their comments.